Shrink Chicks, everyone.
Welcome to Shrink Chicks. How you doing today?
I'm
How is
doing
your
good.
mental health today?
My mental health.
Hmm.
Pretty solid today. I'm having a little bit of anxiety because I can hear the puppy in her crate downstairs. And I'm not moving around. I don't know how she's so sneaky. She knows that I'm here. When we're gone, she's perfect and just fine the crate. But right now she's like,
Do-
Mama, I know you're home.
Dogs
Get
are
me out.
incredible. They sense things. They know when you're
Yep.
upset. They're
Yes.
really amazing,
I
just
know,
fascinating.
but they're good for your mental health.
They're good for your mental health,
Or if your
which
partner has mental health issues.
there it is. Woo.
The tie-in. The tie-in. What to do when you have a partner, a family, friends, anyone that you're a little worried about their mental health. One of the number one questions we get asked is, how do I get so-and-so to go to therapy? And
Mm.
so, although we can't make other people do it, we're going to talk a little bit about how to handle these situations.
And let us just say, it is, it can be really hard for someone, especially someone who is like so into mental health. And if you're listening to this podcast, my assumption is that that's something that you're interested in, something you do a lot of work around. And
And people in
so,
your life don't.
and people in your life don't, right? And so you're controlling what you have control of, which is listening to this podcast and maybe going to therapy yourself. And so I think it can be really hard when you're doing so much work around your mental health and you see the benefit of it. Like you see how much it's changed your life, how your relationships have changed. And then you see other people in your life who maybe haven't done that work. It can be very frustrating, hard, upsetting, difficult to handle. And so we wanted to talk about that today because I think it's something that is like very common.
Yeah, it
We
is.
all deal with it in different ways.
So let's talk about it by starting to go through some of the questions we have today to sort of navigate our conversation here.
Yes, love it.
Because here's one of, like I said, top question we get: how to suggest therapy to someone who's not willing to try. You can suggest therapy as much as you want. If the person is unwilling to try, there's nothing you can really do. But what you can say is, I need you to get help for our relationship. I'll go with you. I'll help you find someone. I am worried about you, right? Like we have different control in different relationships. In a relationship with our parents, we can set a boundary. I can't come home in the evenings, right? I can't come home when you're escalated. I can't come home when you drink, blah, blah. Here's all these things we can do. When it's someone in our life, let's say someone we live with, a roommate or partner, I can't keep doing this unless we figure out a different way to function, right? So the boundary you set and the communication is going to be really different in different relationships. If your boss does not take care of their mental health at all, it's going to be real fucking limited.
Different conversation you're having there. Maybe none at all.
Maybe not at all, right? Maybe that's just a new job. So what I want you to think about
Can you imagine being able to have a conversation with your boss about their mental health? I hope that our clinicians, if either of us are losing our minds, hope that our
or
clinicians can come to us and say, listen,
we're worried about this.
we're worried about this. You
Well,
should work on your mental health.
even if there's something we miss, right? Like it doesn't have to be
Yes.
like it's like this like extreme thing, but like if we do anything, people have blind spots all the time. And that's the thing is like sometimes you don't know. Like I will say this. I do this as a job, right? And like when I, especially postpartum, I didn't realize how bad it was until I was out of it. So there is a lot of times that you cannot see what you're in. It doesn't mean people are necessarily resisting, but it's really hard when looking at something means you're gonna have to change something. And I was in such survival mode at the time. I don't think that even if someone came to me and said it, I would hope I would have heard them, and I can't necessarily guarantee I would have. I think I would have just said, this is just hormones. This is just baby blues.
And I think that that's a piece of it too, right? Like that we go to someone when we're in a different state of mind than the state of mind that they are in. And we
Hmm.
almost expect them to be able to see our perspective from like where we are. But when you're like in the thick of depression, it's much harder to be able to see things clearly, right?
Yeah.
To be able to say, like, yeah, oh, I should get help for this, or I should. And so the tough thing about depression is that it does create kind of this veil and a challenge to be able to see that like this might be helpful, right? When you're in that place, you're like, well, no one's going to understand this, right? Like, why would I go get help? So I guess especially if you've never experienced depression before, you've never experienced that, it's hard to really, understand what the place that person might be in. And I think too, I think we're so quick also for someone to, and listen, I'm guilty of this, for someone who like really believes in therapy, obviously, really believe in therapy, like strong supporter of therapy, that we jump right into like, well, you should go talk to someone, right? Like jump right into therapy. As opposed to like maybe there are some other things that might be helpful for their mental health that they're more open to doing or more willing to do, um, that might ease them towards taking care of themselves that maybe isn't at the time going to therapy.
Yeah.
Therapy might be a big jump.
Huge. Huge.
I'm sorry I
Eh,
interrupted you when you were talking about the boss situation. It just,
I
just
loved it.
it made me
I don't
think.
think you did. No, right, but I think I love what you're saying of, like, sometimes there's an ease in. Sometimes we're in a different place, and although I wish that we all grew up in families and cultures that normalize therapy, it's simply just not true. It's not. And also to say that therapy has not done harm to many people is also not true. Many people do not go to therapy because they had really horrific experiences with therapy, or know people that had horrific experiences with therapy, or had some type of trauma. Let's say when you Let's say, your roommate, when they were younger, went to the school counselor to talk about stuff at home. The school counselor reported them to CPS, and then right, like, and then there's a fear if I tell anyone. These are very, very real things that happen because of the system, and so we're not here to place judgment on like I'm better because I go to therapy, right? Like it's here to figure out how to navigate what works and how to best help people in our community, right? So, the question was, how do you suggest therapy to someone who's not willing to try? What's your script, Jen?
So, I mean, I think just starting with the idea of like they're not willing to try. That one, as I said, whether it's therapy or something else, to be able to say something like, "Hey, I understand that, you don't want to jump into therapy. I completely understand that. Is there anything else we can talk about that might be more helpful for your mental health? Something that like, can we brainstorm what can we do together that might help pull you out of this or take care of you in some way?" Um, and then you can slowly ease the idea in about therapy. I don't think it's something when you push something on someone, they're more likely to go in the opposite direction,
Nobody
right?
likes that.
No. They're like, I just want
You
to make
need to
this
do
decision for
this.
myself.
Yes, you
Right.
need to do this. I'll be like, fuck, I do.
Right. And I think you can say something like, right. You can say something like, I really care about you and I really care about our relationship. And I love you and I see you're struggling. I understand that you don't want to go into therapy. I respect that. Can we talk about like some other options? Like, what are you open to? Like, because I see how hard this is for you and I want to help you in some way. I want to help support you. And so, how can I help support you in doing that? It might be the case that they're not willing to go to therapy right now. They might be willing to go to therapy in the future. We have to allow people to do things in their own time. And once again, I am guilty of this.
Tell us your guilt.
Well, I so believe in therapy so much. Um, and when I hear people like, my husband's family, for example, I really infiltrated their family with therapy. I was just like, everyone needs to go, right? It's the best. So,
How many of them went? What's the data that came out of that?
I think I'm like slowly getting there. I've been in the
Okay.
family for maybe like 8 years now. So I'm slowly getting people there.
So that's what I mean about slowly. People think,
Yes.
okay, I think that that is really important to say. 8
It's been eight
years.
years.
People think I mean 2 weeks. When we talk about patience in relationships, I don't mean 2 weeks, baby.
We mean years.
I mean, shit takes time. And you're also allowed to say, you know what? That doesn't work for me. It doesn't work for me to wait 8 years, right? In other relationships, I'm like, baby, I got my whole life. Let's do it.
Patient lady.
Mhm.
And so I think that that's a piece of it is like to be patient. And also, while you're suggesting something, understand that they're not going to come from the same position as you. They don't have the same experience with therapy. They don't. And so you can talk about your experience, but also be understanding that maybe they are not as open to that experience and that
Mhm.
that's okay. So that there are other options, right? Like, what are other options? Let's talk about that. Let's brainstorm. What do you think? Do you
No,
have any
I love that.
scripts for that?
So mine is that people tend to do stuff in community more, right? So I'm going to offer to go with you. I'm going to offer for us to go together. I'm going to offer to help you find someone. Those are the things that I'm going to do. That doesn't work for everyone. But that's what works for me. And so when you say, how do you suggest therapy as someone who's not willing to try? I think I would say, you know what? I think you're going to totally knock down my request. I think there's no chance you're to do this. And still, I'm going to say it and put it on the record. I want you to go to therapy. I want you to talk to someone. I want you to get every support because you deserve it, not because you're in trouble. And I would repeat that every single day. I know you don't want to hear it again. It's a Tuesday, but guess what? I'll say it on Wednesday and Thursday too, baby. I hope
Mhm.
you do this.
And then
And
eventually,
I'm
oh, sorry, go ahead.
but the generosity, the softness, and the compassion,
Yeah.
eventually they're gonna be like, "Jesus fucking Christ," or at least I'm gonna know, "Here's what I did."
Yeah.
I'm never gonna leave and say, "I wish I did something different. I wish I brought that up more." I'm not gonna do it out of rage. I'm not gonna use it to punish them. "Well, you should be in fucking therapy." And I'm saying I'm not gonna do that because I've done that in the past, doesn't work well. Doesn't work, found that out.
Also, then it becomes if that becomes part of the script, then anytime you are suggesting therapy for real without using it as like a weapon, then they're going to see it as a weapon, right?
Exactly.
It starts to fall into that category. So you really got to be careful about the way you talk about therapy as opposed to like, well, you got to get it together. Like you need to go see someone.
Yep. Mhm. So that would be it. Okay, so how to deal with a mom who is in denial about being an alcoholic and she's your bestie. Well, one, I would say, are you also in denial? You can write that in, but if she's your bestie, if she's that important, what are the relationship changes you also have to make? I'm really concerned about your drinking, and because of that, I'm not going to drink with you. I'm really concerned about this. Could we go together? Hey, maybe I'm fucking wrong. Maybe I am dead wrong, and I'm happy to be dead wrong if possible. But could there be something going on with your drinking? Hey, could we try not drinking together? I want to do this for me. Can we do it together? Can we take a month off from drinking?
I think you can talk about too how it might be affecting your relationship with each other, right? If you have a really close relationship, it's going to be important to talk about how the alcoholism is
Mhm.
affecting your relationship.
Right? So that might be something like saying, "Mom, I realized that on Thursday when you go to your bowling league and you drink, I'm really nervous about you driving home. I find myself that I'm not able to sleep at night because I'm thinking about you. I find that I have to check in on you. Here are the things that start to come up to me related to this part of you."
Yeah. I mean, once again, I want to just like, I'm probably going to say this the entire episode. It's just, this is hard. This is a hard topic. It's a really hard topic because um when someone is so resistant and we care about them so much and we love them, we see you know such potential in them taking care of themselves and being a better version of themselves, and we want to move them towards that because we care about them so much. So I just want to like reiterate the fact that everyone who's like listening to this, writing this in, you very clearly care so much and so deeply about these relationships. And I think
Yeah.
that that's just incredible and important.
So, I want to talk about this one. I think this one is very, very
Yeah.
important, which is sibling casually mentions suicidal ideations, but says she's doing fine. How to not freak out. So, one, I think we have to talk about that. Unfortunately, suicidal ideation has become like trendy and very casual. Um, and I guess I said unfortunately, but maybe I don't want to put a stigma on that. Maybe like it just is. And like whatever, it doesn't matter either way. It's
Hmm.
just part of our culture and like we just
Hmm.
have to adapt. So I would say to her, you know, when you do that, I internally find myself freaking out. How would I know if you weren't fine? Can we have some code word if it was more? I can commit to not freaking out when you make a joke if you can commit to being honest when it's deeper. How would you know and how would I know? And have like a conversation and be honest about what it does to you. Don't use you language, but I language. I realize that when you make a joke like that, I spend the next 30 minutes having an internal panic attack about what I should be saying and doing. So I'll commit to regulating myself with your humor if you commit to being honest and figuring out how do we say.
I also wonder if there's if there's something in this relationship with your sibling that has happened in the past, right? Like has there been consistent mental health struggles, right? Is this,
History
you
of
know,
self-harm, eating
something,
disorder, and
right,
yeah.
right. Like there's something that has been there, which is right, because it's like that it's not a there's a reason to take it more seriously, right? So I would
Yeah.
also wonder, like, is there some stuff from the past in your relationship with your sibling that you're still trying to process through? And maybe
Or
your
just
sib
or relationship with anyone. I wish I
with
did something
anyone.
different, or there was this kid I sit next
Absolutely.
to in math that something happened with. Yeah.
Right. Or were you expected to take care of your sibling, right? Like how much emphasis was your role in your relationship with your sibling in your family dynamic if they were really struggling with something? So I would also start to look at like what was your role? What role did you play in your relationship with your sibling? And what did that look like? Is that something you want to work on as your sibling gets better, if they are getting better? How can you work on that role and learn how to take care of yourself and say, well, where how do I want our relationship to shift at this point? So that
Mhm,
would be
mhm.
another question I have for
All right. How to not take needing space to work on themselves personally.
them. Oof.
I have something that no one wants to hear.
Say it. No, you
What
have to
if
say it.
what if it is personal? What if they need a
Mm-hmm.
break from you? What would that mean? It's a very real thing,
Mm-hmm.
right? If someone in my let's give an example, right?
If I said that to you.
If you said that let's do this. Let's say here's what I hear about. I'm struggling with fertility. All of a sudden you get pregnant and I'm like, I need a break. It's not necessarily personal to you, but there's something with you that
Mm-hmm.
provokes it within me. Does that make sense?
Yes,
Right?
absolutely. Absolutely.
So when we talk about this idea of not taking it personally, you might have to say, like, okay, this is more to do with her struggle with fertility than it does with me as a human. It doesn't say anything about my worth. And but it does mean that something about me is, triggering and how should I handle that as well?
And I think that another thing that, no one wants to hear is that there are times in our lives where we outgrow one another too. And that can be really, really hard to hear. And you might get to a place in your relationships, your friendships, where you might be at different places. Like the fertility example is a perfect example
Mhm.
of it might create a little bit of separation in your relationship. Or I don't know, I'm trying to think of other ones, but you might be in different places. And because of that,
I lost my job and you just told me that you got a huge promotion,
exactly. Another example.
right?
Or the things that you used to do together are no longer, a piece of your relationship
I'm a
anymore.
sober person and we used to drink every
Exactly. Oh,
Thursday.
you're so good with
I
examples.
I'm good at examples, throw them out. I
You're
can
the
just keep doing
best.
it.
You're so good at it. And so I think that that would be my first thought would be, how can you, like, what's coming up for you, right? What is it? What feels personal about it? Right? What kind of relationship did you have with this person? Um, but I think the fact of the matter is this person is setting a very clear boundary, right? They are saying, I need some space to work on myself. And that in and of itself is a healthy thing to do,
It
right?
is.
They're being very communicative about the fact that they do need boundaries.
And
And
you'll
that,
probably still need to regulate yourself.
yes, because also if that wasn't present in your relationship before, right?
Mm.
This is new and this might feel like a rejection for you. So, your ability to regulate and work through that feeling of rejection is going to be really important in this. So, it might feel personal and you can work through that for yourself, right?
Oh,
What is it? Go ahead.
Well, no, I was gonna say, before we started recording, I got on this call and what did I say? Do you remember?
I
So it's been
I can maybe only record one.
I said I want to be done, right? We had planned to record 2. I said I want to be done by 2 o'clock. I want to go on a hike with my family. Did I say to you, fuck you, Jen? I don't want to be near you for one goddamn second.
If you did, I'd be like, okay, you take your time. Clearly
Yeah,
something's going on.
you would.
Clearly something's going on with you. Maybe you have some things to process.
But right, because I said a boundary.
Yeah.
That boundary affected you. We will
Also,
only get one done.
you're acting like I want to record like a million today. Like, you think I'm disappointed.
This is an example, bro.
I'm like,
I'm
oh
not
God,
asking
how
about real life
terrible.
Jen. I'm asking about the therapeutic process.
Real life Jen is like, oh my God, maybe this person's going to cancel and we wanted to record today.
But I'm saying, right? I set a boundary that affected you and your plans in your day.
Totally.
Right?
Yeah, really, really. I'm really upset about it. Really affected me.
I need you to pretend to be for this.
Sorry.
Example.
Oh my God. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Okay. I'm back.
What could have possibly?
Okay. So I had planned to do this recording and I am really specific about my plans and I make plans and I'm really rigid about them. And so you're affecting the rest of my
garbage.
day.
This example is gone to shit.
Okay. No, I hear you. I hear what you're saying.
You're so good at examples.
I know. No, I'm screwing it up. And so, okay, I could have been like, hey, I planned on recording today. We're going to have to record on another day now.
Yeah. Yeah.
And because of that, I'm really upset. I'm taking it personally because you don't care about me.
I can't take it seriously.
I know.
So you could have felt any of these ways, right?
Yes.
You could have felt rejected, abandoned, annoyed, frustrated, angry, any of those things. And it still doesn't make the boundary I set wrong. Hey, I want to be done. I need some time with my family. It's how many more beautiful days are we going to have? We live in Pennsylvania. I got to get outside, right? Like, yes, people are allowed to be mad at you for setting those things and you're still allowed to set them. So when you say you could have taken it personally or could have said, yes, Emmalee really needs the rest of the afternoon off.
So let's say I take it personally, right? If I'm like, oh God, I'm angry. She doesn't care about me, right? That would be something for me to process through of like, okay, how am I going to take care of myself in these moments? What am I going to be? How can I adjust, right? How can I adjust to this? Emmalee and I are in a partnership.
Yeah.
And so and that's every relationship, right?
Yep.
You can look at it as a partnership. When you're in a partnership, you have to be respectful of someone else's boundaries and what feels right for them. Because without that respect, there is no healthy partnership.
Now, Jen could say, you want to know what? This is the 80th time Emmalee has done this. This is not working for me anymore. I have to take a break from the podcast, stop the podcast, etc., any of these things. And she gets to do that.
Right? Gets to make that choice.
Gets to make that choice. So you are right. So we need to respect people. We can still be honest and direct in relationships and still respect. So if someone says no, that's it.
Right. Like I would get to set a boundary if I'm going through, I'm like, listen, this has been happening. This is really hard for me to continue to adjust my schedule over and over again. And so I need to set a boundary now of like what works for me. And that's a partnership, right? Both people are able to set their boundaries, are able to communicate their boundaries, and you work with them, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can say, I respect you. I love you. I want you to go on a hike with your family. I'm a little jealous. I wish I could go on a hike.
You can.
I know.
You won't, but you can.
I won't, but I can. I'm wearing really big boots today. And like when I move my legs, it hurts my hips. Do you want to see them?
Yeah, kind of. What shoes are you wearing? Oh my God, are those new?
Yeah.
Yeah, where'd you get those?
Doc Martens.
I was going to say they look like Docs. Is that your first pair of docs?
Yeah, they dig
Yeah,
into my
you're
ankles.
new. You're a doc girl now.
I'm a newbie.
Well, you have always wanted to be emo, so this works out well for you. Okay.
So bad. I'm
All
emo
right.
inside.
Here's a really, really good question. I like this because it goes off what we just talked about.
Okay, good.
How to support them when they want space, but you're worried they're isolating themselves. Ooh.
Mm.
So you're saying, right? Like, I want to respect this, and there's concern. And I think that's the language you use to them. I want to respect you and give you space, and I'm worried you're isolating, and how would we know if, this wasn't working?
And I think you can say too, hey, I respect the fact that you're isolating and that that's important for you. I'm going to keep reaching out periodically. And you can take it if you want it. If not, you can, continue to take time to yourself. Like for me, I am someone when I am struggling with something that like isolating actually is pretty helpful for me. And it's not for everyone. It's something
Mm-mm.
that people go into and then it takes them into a dark hole.
That is one thing I've never experienced in my life.
Yeah.
Isolating
That
myself. Mine's like,
isolating
I'm
is
gonna
helpful.
chit chat with everyone.
Yeah, no, like if
Mine's like, I need to shut up.
yeah, I need if I'm struggling with something, I need to take some time for myself because almost creates an emotional boundary for me of like if I'm separate from everyone else, I can recenter myself. I know how to take care of myself if it's just me and I'm focused on. So I think that it also comes with the person you're talking about. Do they know themselves? Do they understand themselves? Are they typically someone who needs to isolate in order to readjust? If Emmalee was like, I need to isolate and not talk to anyone, I'd be like, something's wrong.
No, what if I really did though?
No, but you do for like a day.
Okay, yeah. If it was a week,
If it was like a week,
that's true.
I
And
know
let's
that
be
you
honest, it
need
was not a day. It's like I had like 3 hours.
it is. It's just like a little bit of time because she'll say that she's like, I need some time to myself, and it'll last just like a little bit of
And then
time.
I'll be like, look at this thing I found on Etsy.
Exactly what happens. So that's I think some things to consider too is like, has this happened before? Is it helpful for them if they isolate? How long have they been isolating for? If they've uh, isolated themselves in the past, did things get worse? Did it not help? So I think there's so much to consider in terms of history, how much they take care of their mental health, how much they understand and know themselves. Um, if it's a big shift from their personality, right? So like there's so many things to consider in that.
Yeah.
But I do think you can have a conversation with them as like, hey, I just want to reach out to you because I realize you're isolating. And if that's helping you, that's great. Keep taking care of yourself. But I am here if you need me. And I'm going to reach out periodically to see how you're doing.
I love that. And then you don't get to get resentful when you do it, right? Like
Yes.
you have to say to yourself, like, oh, well, okay, well, I've reached out to them every day for a week and they still aren't giving me anything. Like that, like once again, let's go back to the patience thing and that like real relationships are like dedication and slow in time. Um, Trying to hold a boundary with an unwell person, which I'm guess means someone who's struggling, but other families undermine it. Okay. If you're the first person in your family to do something different and set a boundary, it is an incredibly inherently lonely role. Being the person in your family that changes it and goes against the grain, it doesn't matter how well you do it, how kind you do it, how gentle you do it, how blah, blah, blah you do it, it will be lonely. That's it. And so you'll have to say, people are going to undermine this, and still, this is the right decision for me.
You don't have control over what any boundaries that anyone in your family is creating, right? That is not something that you have control over. The only control you have are the boundaries that you set with this person. And it might be the case, right? If the goal is, well, I'm going to set this boundary. So the thing that comes to mind for me, and I don't know if that's what this person's talking about, if like someone in the family has an addiction, right? you've made the choice to set this boundary and not enable them. I'm not going to enable them. Because I want them to get better, but other people in the family are continuing to do the same pattern. That can be really, really hard because you are doing what you can do in that relationship to not enable that or not give in that situation. But you see that your family members are not doing that same thing. That can be
Yeah.
really, really hard because you know that that's continuing to support this addiction.
And you're
And so,
also allowed to well, the other thing about it is, like, when people undermine it, you're also allowed to set a boundary with those people that, like,
yeah.
"I understand you're coming from a place of love, and I'm not interested in talking about this anymore. I'm not going to
Mhm.
talk about this anymore with you."
Mhm. And you could say, listen, this is where I stand. I recognize that you don't see it the same way, but so clearly we're on opposite ends. And so we are not going to come together on this. And I am going to continue to let you know this is where I stand. And I will continue to set my boundary both with this person and with your family
Yeah.
because
Uh,
that's what you have control over.
somebody said is anxiety is something that can be passed down.
Yes.
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 Sorry.
Yes. Very
Anxiety,
much so.
depression, eating disorders, it all
All of
can.
it. You can take
Addiction.
all of it.
Sorry.
What a lovely gift that we get from our parents. What a
The gift that
beautiful
truly keeps on
the
giving.
gift that keeps on giving. And not only will you get that gift, you will also pass it on down to your children.
And so you give them ways to cope. We try our best, and we know that inevitably we are on a big floating walk, and not that much actually does matter. And we
A,
figure out a way.
a floating what?
Rock. It's like
Oh,
what that's like what the
rock.
Earth is, right?
Yeah.
Are we a floating?
I thought you said walk like thing you cooking.
I probably did say walk. Walk? Rock?
Every time
I
I
went to a lot of speech therapy and now I talk for a living and it's
uh
weird.
it's beautiful though. And every time my husband makes stir fry in our wok, he plays the song Walk It Out.
That's actually a really cute family tradition.
Really cute.
You know what's funny is like I was thinking that my mom likes to point out my daughter's speech is incredible.
Yeah.
She's just been a talker from a really young age and she's just really good at talking. And so she says, like, I couldn't say the word guitar until I was 8 years old with Millie with so many hours of speech therapy. And Millie will be like, oh, the rhinoceros will play the guitar and the like the hardest fucking words ever. And my mom was like, you couldn't do that till you were 8. I was like, yes, thank you.
Thank you, Mom. Thank you for reminding me of that.
The good news is my delayed speech was not passed on to my daughter.
Right. And look how much you're talking now.
Not well, but she's doing it. Okay. How to best support them while also protecting your own mental health. I like this one.
I love this one.
Okay.
Okay, I want you to think about creating an emotional boundary around yourself, right? We always talk about you cannot take care of anyone else unless you are taking care of yourself first. You have to feel really solid with yourself. It is not your job to be this person's, I don't know who they are to you, but whoever they are, it is not your job to be their therapist. Unless someone wrote this in and they're your client, right? I mean, maybe it is your job.
Go to supervision.
Go to supervision. That is our answer. No, but I think I'm so what number question is this? Because I need to read it again.
Number 10.
Number 10. Oh, so you have to be really solid and create safeguards around yourself when you are supporting other people struggling with their mental health. It's really, really, your boundaries are really important and really essential.
And boundaries, let's like clarify what boundaries are, right? Yeah. So, right. So, like one of those may be leaving the situation, but also I think what you're referring to is emotional boundaries.
Yes.
Right. Which is that like I'm going to try to not get triggered and regulate myself.
Yes. And so, but your ability to do that really depends on how much you have been taking care of yourself, right? So, like if you had a really long day at work, right, and your boss yelled at you and you talked to a lot of angry people, whatever it is, you had like a really hard day at work, you come home, your ability to hold on to yourself and regulate your own emotions is going to be much more challenging. So it might be the case that you have these conversations or you're supporting this person at a time in which you have the emotional space. That might not be all the time. You might not always be in that place where you're able to do that. And so, even just recognizing or being in tune with yourself to say, do I have the emotional space right now to create this emotional boundary while I'm supporting this person? Am I able to check in with yourself consistently over and over and over again? Because you also get to say, hey, I'm in a difficult headspace right now. I'm unable to be there for you. That is where your boundaries come in because you have to be able to hold on to yourself. You have to be able to ground yourself, take care of yourself in order to set those boundaries and to be able to be there for that person
Mhm.
without taking it on.
Mhm. Mhm. So I love what you're talking about, right? So like one is like how do I check in with myself and what my capacity is? So when I come home, when I enter in the house, what's my capacity today? And adjust accordingly every single time.
Mm,
The ability to walk away, to put yourself in a timeout or to calm down or whatever the fuck you want to call it is incredibly important when going through this, especially if that person lives within your home. If your mom is someone who's difficult and triggering for you and you had a really bad day and you see her calling, it might be a day to not answer. Check in with yourself first and then adjust accordingly. That's what you have to keep saying every time.
like the idea, I just want to talk about the idea of monitoring like how you're doing because I think that there's this there's a misconception that we're supposed to be like consistent with how, if we've done the work on ourselves, we're going to consistently be able to like feel the same or not wake up stressed or like, things won't affect us. But as human beings, our emotional capacity varies from day to day. And it's going to, right? Depending on how much you're dealing with, how much you're working through, what you've done that day. And so that I think is just so important to highlight that like that varies and that changes based on like what you did that day or
Mhm.
what you're going through, what you're dealing with emotionally, your hormones, right? Like there's so much that plays into that. And so we always say know yourself, grow yourself on this podcast, but truly the more you know yourself, the more you know and you can check in with yourself and say where am I today, the more you're going to be able to set those boundaries, but you
Yeah.
have to be in tune with yourself.
We're gonna run out of time here. This could
Wow.
probably been a two-parter. Maybe we'll
Wow.
do maybe we'll do a part two in the future.
Yeah.
Because we have to get to Dear Em and Jen.
Yes.
Dear Em and Jen, I hope you can provide some insight into this or some further questions for me to consider in therapy. I'm finding that when my partner, who's usually really strong and steady, expresses himself to me, I have a hard time with it since I'm not used to seeing him struggle, like ever. It feels uncomfortable in the moment, and my mind kind of goes blank on what to say or like how to nurture him or even just to be there. Thoughts. First of all, look at this badass insight.
And you go to therapy and you want questions to consider. You are like, this is lovely.
We love you.
Um, First I want to say if in the relationship, right, if if your partner doesn't typically open up, right? If they're always the strong one, the fact that they are opening up and they are starting to like express themselves to you, um, first means that like they're feeling a level of safety with you already. There's something that you're creating that because if they're typically holding themselves together, they're not expressing themselves, then it might be the case that they aren't used to letting that out or they aren't used to, talking about when maybe they don't feel as steady. And so clearly there's a safety in your relationship that's giving them the space to be able to talk about what they're going through. But it sounds to me like when they start to do that, your anxiety starts to come up. So something I would bring in therapy is like what is that bringing up for you? Is it I'm putting pressure on myself to say the right thing, or I want to be able to fully be there for them, or make sure that this feels safe for them so that they continue to open up, right? So it sounds like instead of being able to be in the moment with them, be present with them, you might be going right into your anxiety. So I wonder what's coming up for you. What anxieties come? What's the fear? What's the worry about what's going to happen in those moments? The more you can understand that for yourself, the more you can go into, okay, I realize this is coming up for me. How do I ground myself, bring myself back down into the present moment so I actually can fully be there for them? There might not be a perfect thing to say.
I also would be like, what's it like to ask this person what he needs, right? She said, like, I don't know how to nurture
Yes.
him. Okay, I'll ask him. Do you want me to, in times when this happens, do you want me to rub your back? Do you want me to just sit next to you? Do you want me to listen? Do you want me to get you a pillow to punch, right? Like, what are these things that would work? And then you have some direction. The reality is that as a society, we are so uncomfortable, specifically with emotions, but also male emotions, that like we right like I wonder if they feel the same way if like a female does this, has this, right? How uncomfortable you are. And I've heard this in the room so many times,
Me
like
too.
especially when a male starts crying for like if it's a female partner to be like, oh, I like don't even know what to do for them. What would you do to a friend? In that moment, that's your friend. Good relationships are built on friendship. How do we nurture friends? How do we forgive friends? How do we talk to friends? And so, in that, I want you to put yourself there. If this was my dear, dear friend, how would I handle it?
I love that.
And that's it for today's episode.
That's it for today.
That's it.
Yeah.
We love you and thank you and love when you listen to Shrink Chicks. We hope you enjoy this episode and send it to someone else who might enjoy it as well. We always love a 5-star review, 5-star rating and a review. On anywhere you get your podcast, you would follow us on Apple Podcasts. If you're looking for a clinician, we would love to hook you up with one of our amazing clinicians. If you're located in Massachusetts, New York, New Jersey, Delaware, Florida, California, in person and virtual, in Pennsylvania, in Philadelphia. We have a brand new Rittenhouse location. It's opened up. We have immediate availability for some of the days, but also we have immediate availability for any low fee couples and family therapy. We have an amazing group of interns that are looking to continue their education in hours. So reach on out to us. We'd love to get you set up with a good fit. You can check us out, thetherapygroup.com. Follow us at ShrinkChicks and at The Therapy Group. And don't forget that to grow yourself,
You gotta know yourself.
we'll see you next week.